Welcome to California, CATL. It's your boy Chili Bo Pippin. Holla at us cool people, where the cool people at? So cool, yeah. And where my ladies? Come on and bounce with me. Come on and bounce with me. Come on and bounce. And all my fellas, what up fellas? Y'all just chill. Y'all just chill. You know I'm so fresh. Know I'm so grimy. Always stay chillin' with the cops right behind me. You know I'm so cool. You know I'm so cool. You know I'm so fresh. You know I'm so grimy. Always stay chillin' with the cops right behind me. You know I'm so cool. You know I'm so cool. I'm so C-double-O, light up your L. This beat is so swell like the homie Rosdale. But no, this ain't no beatbox, we call it street rock. They say the homie Chill Will got the heat locked. Young Cali, come clap for daddy. So savvy with the patty, you can ask the family. Yeah, I'm young, rich, and dangerous. Interest rates fluctuate with my paper chase. Who the boss? I'm the boss, I'll be late today. I'ma drink, and get drunk today. Cause I'm cool in my polo, cool in the Lolo, cool with the fofo, cool with the. You know I'm so fresh, know I'm so grimy. Always stay chillin' with the cops right behind me. You know I'm so cool. You know I'm so cool. You know I'm so fresh. You know I'm so grimy. Always stay chillin' with the cops right behind me. You know I'm so cool. You know I'm so cool. Bouncing in my peanut butter beans, cooling through the cone zone, blowing in the wind. Roll around town, sitting on chromosomes. Rocks like ice cream, we just call them cold stones. I'm so grimy and I stay fresh. The chicks call me Chill, got it tatted on my chest. Stunner so sick I can see through the mist. And I'm cool with the bullies, so who wanna trip? Yeah, it's Chill Weezy, hip hop squeegee. I make it look easy, A, B, C, D. Cause I'm cool in my polo, cool in the Lolo, cool with the fofo, cool with the. You know I'm so fresh, know I'm so grimy. Always stay chillin' with the cops right behind me. You know I'm so cool. You know I'm so cool. You know I'm so fresh. You know I'm so grimy. Always stay chillin' with the cops right behind me. You know I'm so cool. You know I'm so cool. Now get it rockin', and get it rockin'. Leave it to Mr. Peanut Butter to get it poppin'. Now get it rockin', now get it rockin'. Leave it to Mr. Peanut Butter to get it poppin'. Fist of Patron, Casey past my nose. Shake it fast, drop it slow. Get you snapping that neck. Yeah, I can make you famous. The king of the West, from CA to GA. Stay chillin', both fresh. The police right behind me. They wanna catch me slippin', but I ain't just chillin'. I ain't too cool for prison. Yeah, and keep it rockin'. Yeah, and keep it poppin'. You know I'm so fresh. Know I'm so grimy. Always stay chillin' with the cops right behind me. You know I'm so cool. You know I'm so cool. You know I'm so fresh. You know I'm so grimy. Always stay chillin' with the cops right behind me. You know I'm so cool. You know I'm so cool.
Tell me Paul Saladino doesn't look like one of the apes from Planet of the Apes.
He does.
Especially with the mustache. It's like a weird stringy mustache. Yeah, look at that. Just put him in blackface. Uh-oh.
Everyone, welcome back to the channel. As always, just a quick reminder that I'm now offering the SIBO, organic acid, stool test and consult via my website. So if you have any health or digestive problems, then consider taking these tests, as they will provide a lot of very detailed information upon which you can start making informed decisions and then start getting your health back on track. And on that bombshell, to the video. Now, it's clear that many people fall into the keto and carnivore diets, usually to resolve health problems. It could be gut issues, autoimmune issues, or even diabetes. But the problem with many of these people is that they add 1 and 1 and they get 35. They have underlying health issues, and instead of fixing these health issues at the root cause, they get brainwashed into thinking that all fruits and vegetables are bad for them.
And to make things worse, like many people, I started getting swayed by all of this stuff, namely things like the natural defense chemicals in food, like plants want to kill you. Things like oxalates, lectin, phytic acid, all of these anti-nutrients found in plants. When you eat them, they're now like fighting against your body.
Now, if I said to people, I can make you rich within 24 hours, you just need to give me £1,000, then most people would rightly say you're a scammer. But for some reason, when influencers come to the internet and say that fruits and vegetables are toxic, and if you remove them from your diet, then all of your health go away, then people will drink this nonsense up for one very simple reason. Quite simply, when your health is failing you, you are more vulnerable and you are more prone to making irrational decisions. But the thing about truth is that it will always come through. You might see some initial health improvements by going keto or carnivore, but sooner or later you will see the consequences.
The end of that story, or the next chapter of the story, was about 2 years into the carnivore diet. I started noticing persistence of unpleasant symptoms. So testosterone dropped to around 500 total, sleep disturbances, palpitations, muscle cramps when I was surfing or climbing. And I started to think, okay, maybe long-term ketosis is not great for me.
Now, you might look at it and say, what's the harm going keto or carnivore? You might get some sleep issues, muscle cramps, or even palpitations. Well, for many, it can be much worse.
I just had a stroke down in the basement. I was doing my arm weights on a bench, on an incline bench, and I was pushing my arm up in the air. I had just 15 pounds, which is not very. And unfortunately, my left arm started going numb, and then my left leg went numb. I immediately knew it was a stroke, and I ran upstairs and I said, Alan, get out of bed. I'm having a stroke. I'm having a stroke. Call 911. So,
but I knew I needed to get upstairs because Alan would have been asleep if I passed out in the basement. And I knew something was quite seriously wrong with me. I'm a girl who at 65 years old had a stroke, and I'm going to have my cholesterol taken. I'm pretty concerned, actually, that I've been on carnivore on and off for a long time. I don't remember exactly when I started.
Now, I have made a few.
So the reason why people aren't sleeping on carnivore is because they get low blood sugar and their body's basically waking them up to have them go find fruit, basically. Carbs, sugar, but, you know, probably fruit since we're designed to eat fruit. It's the same reason why if you go out drinking in the middle, you'll wake up really early in the morning. It's your body waking you up to tell you to go hydrate with water because you've, you know, displaced all the water in your body with alcohol. So, yeah, it's not, I mean, that would suck to wake up every night, like just wake up and be like having a carb craving. It's not because carbs are drugs. It's because every cell in our body runs off carbs. And if you expect to do anything, you need to have a sufficient amount of carbs in your body.
A few videos about a shocking rise in self-reported strokes and heart attacks in the keto and carnivore communities, but none of the cult leaders like Sean Baker want to acknowledge the situation because it's not good for business. But this denial-like mentality goes right across the keto and carnivore communities.
And then I started to dig a little bit deeper and do some actual research into these topics. And much of what I found was conflicting and in many cases, not even true. And when I told my carnivore diet friends this, they would get all defensive. And they would start to bring up all the doctors that completely swore by it. They would say things like, well, how do you explain all of these people's health conditions that are completely disappearing? And then they start to dismiss my concerns by saying stuff like, you need to do more research. You need to look into Dr. Ken Berry and Dr. Anthony Chafee and Nutrition by Judy. And all because I was finding things that was going against what the carnivore diet people were saying. But in my gut, I knew this wasn't right, so I dug deeper. Because as it turns out, I was on to something. Because all these figures and people pushing the diet, which we're going to start calling the usual suspects because they come up so often, they were only telling one part of the story, the part of the story that was convenient for them.
But the good thing is, for most sensible people, they don't want to live in echo chambers if their health is not improving, or they just know that what they are being told isn't stacking up.
I began to also follow along the way, along those months, during those months' time, I started following other influencers that aren't necessarily on the keto carnivore side. So I opened my mind up a little bit, and I started to venture out and listen to what other experts had to say. Experts such as Dr. Lane Norton, who I credit with having changed my mind about the carnivore diet. So I thank you very much, Dr. Norton, if you happen to be watching this video. Anyway, after watching many of Dr. Norton's videos, I came to the conclusion that, gosh, maybe this isn't so great after all. Maybe I should just try counting my calories.
Now, if you have unfortunately found your way into the carnivore and keto diets, then please take a step back and take a pragmatic look at the improvements that you think you are seeing. Are the improvements that you are seeing because you are only eating meat, or could it possibly be you have removed processed refined foods from your diet?
And my mental energy started to suffer, let alone my physical energy. That really started to fade away. The first little bit, things were okay. And even after a little bit, I started trying to manage my electrolytes, stuff like that. Never really made it better. I knew something was up, and I really started to think, were plant-based foods really that bad for me, and did I really need to be eating this way? And then my gym performance went, and my bowel movements changed, not for the better. And I really started to wonder, was I seeing improvements and feeling a little bit better in spite of what I was doing and not because of it? Instead of it actually being the absence of plants, was it because I was no longer eating so much junk and drinking alcohol?
Now, the next point that we need to cover off is, are a lot of these carnivore and keto influencers deliberately misleading people for their own financial gains? Of course, there are many who make videos that they know will gain more views and therefore generate more money. Obviously, controversy sells. Unfortunately, humans love the path of least resistance. Tell people that they can fix all of their health problems in 3 weeks, eating only meat, and people jump on it because it appears easy.
Yep.
Nobody wants to hear the true
Easy
reality, though. Whether you are losing weight, building a business, or regaining your health, there are no quick fixes in life. We all know this, and it's why the saying, if it's too good to be true, then it probably is, was invented. But I think there's a
Hey. Oh, he's frozen. No, he's just drinking water like usual.
Staying hydrated. What's up? How you guys doing? Am I coming through clear?
Aw,
Am I cutting out?
like a robot.
Oh man, I should be okay.
Labor
My
Day
internet.
weekend, so it's a lot of traffic. We can't.
Yeah,
have
you
a
guys-
bad connection.
You guys are going to have to bear with us this weekend because there's a lot of people in the area for Labor Day weekend sucking up the bandwidth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
What's
fun.
this brat
Holiday.
background you have, Bracky?
That's my it's my Dr. Bronner's label.
Your what?
Dr. Bronner's label.
Hmm.
Can you hear me?
Oh.
It's the old soap label. It's my statement against the One Great Work Network and the people who aren't exactly consistent. The soap label.
Bracky, we can't hear you.
Oh man.
Stick around, though. It might get better.
The wider
we'll see
issue
how it
with influencers on the internet, it is just they do not have the education to understand the implications of the advice that they are giving. Just listen to Thomas DeLauer here.
This one is going to irritate some people and probably confuse some people. But number 4 is I would have controlled my saturated fat intake more. Hear me out on this. We know now, well, we did know then, but we were in kind of an echo chamber. If you look at a lot of the literature, saturated fat in abundance, in an overcaloric state, is definitely a contributor to insulin resistance as well. It's not just sugar, and it's not just saturated fat, but when you look at them individually in high amounts, they can cause a fatty liver. They can cause insulin resistance.
So here we have influencers advising on diets, knowing the problems that they cause, because they don't want to communicate this because it's bad for business, because they haven't done the research in the first place, because they are caught in echo chambers, or because all of the above. Again, just listen to what Thomas is saying here about the basics of nutrition.
The third thing that I would have done differently is, depending on what I was eating, I would have added a multivitamin into my diet. Because I realized that if I reverse engineer and look at the way my diet was a lot of times on keto, there was no way I was getting adequate nutrition in. I was just not. I would eat things like chicken breast, and then I would also add cheese to it. I would do heavy cream, and I'm looking at this, I'm like, there's not any colors to this. I wasn't, some days, not getting a lot of red meat. Point is that on the days that I wouldn't be getting maybe liver in or red meat in, I should have been probably adding a good multivitamin in.
He didn't even know at the time, or couldn't even be bothered to look, that the diet he was following was nutritionally inadequate, despite influencing millions to follow his approach. Now, time and time again, we are hearing more and more influencers who fail on these diets say shocking things like, when I started to do more research, I knew the importance of X, Y, and Z. Just listen to Paul Saladino here.
I was definitely in ketosis at the time, monitoring blood ketones with a meter, not deep ketosis, but definitely ketosis. And so at that point, I started to dig into the research a little bit more and understood that insulin signaling is critical at the level of the kidney to hold on to minerals, to hold on to potassium, calcium, sodium, chloride, magnesium, and that in long-term ketosis in most humans, you're going to become so electrolyte depleted that it's almost impossible to resolve that with enormous amounts of electrolytes.
It's shocking that you get these idiots come to the internet with very little understanding of nutrition and convince millions of people to follow their advice. And then 6 or 12 months later, they flip-flop to something else they've read on the internet and have no understanding of. Yeah. This guy sums it up very well.
They're just demonizing food. Like, you know, Paul Saladino, I know that he's not considered fully carnivore by the real carnivore people because he eats fruit and honey. But, you know, Paul Saladino, he goes into grocery stores and, you know, makes fun of people for eating vegetables and wears these stupid shirts, you know, kale is bullshit and that kind of stuff. And, you know, making people feel guilty about eating vegetables and going in there with no shirt. Who goes into a grocery store with no shirt and shoes and then starts bragging about people eating vegetables? I mean, this is like a psycho. So, you know, the more I see stuff like that, the more I think this is like a cult.
So true. But the final point that I want to make here is, if you are someone who has health issues, please look at the person you are getting advice from on the internet and look at how inconsistent their messaging is. Ask yourself, what are their motives for giving you that advice? Because if money is involved, there is a good chance your health is not even a passing thought for that influencer. It's just another payday. Ask yourself the simple question of whether it's too good to be true. You can't become rich overnight. You can't lose 60 pounds healthily by taking weight loss injections. And you certainly can't fix underlying health issues on fad, keto, or carnivore diets. You may see some initial benefits, but look at all the people who've gone before you, many included in this video, telling you it caused them problems and it was nothing more than a cult. Anyhow, that's the end of today's video. And if you enjoyed this video, then be sure to check up here, because I'm sure.
What's up, Braggy? Oh, I get it now. I see it. Now that
Yeah.
it's closer, it's Dr. Bronner's.
Yeah. Dude, I've read that label. I've read that label a couple of times and was like, the first couple times I read, I was like, what am I reading? And then like I actually went through and like with my kind of being familiar with new agey stuff, but also knowing that there's good tied into some of it, I was like, okay, this guy's actually got a couple of good points.
Are you going to become a priest in the Dr. Bronner's church?
No.
Kind of look like one. You look like Dr. Bronner's Jesus.
Yeah. I got the Jesus get up, and then I got the sort of pastor looking black shirt. Just waiting for my products to show up in the mail. I picked up some stuff online from them. Once you start looking into some stuff, it's pretty interesting.
You want to watch an Arth Harger video?
I'm actually not sure who that is, but what's the video?
Huh?
I'm not too.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of that. RF Parker.
Arth Harger.
Oh, Arth Harker.
The Beast.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard of him yet. What's the?
What's that?
I was gonna say, what's the video on?
Yeah, it's a pretty cool video.
Much consideration and giving a long of thoughts to reflect upon this issue and discussing it with my psychologist. She's helping me out on this, and we have had long conversations about it. Well, I now know the core of my problem, your problem, everybody's problem, and how we have come down to this. It's because of this piece of shirt right here. Look at him. Just look at that face. One day he just, decided he didn't appreciate it enough, and then decided to come out of the water and started to waddle about with that stupid smirk on his face. And from then on, everything turned into a ride down from Willy Wonka Town to absolute dog shit. Just look at it. I'm vegan, but in reprisal, I would eat this silly prick. Get fucked, you absolute socket muppet. Hello, my dear friends. How is it going? I'm Marty Theriger, and today I'm here to talk about a subject which, well, perhaps by the title of this video alone, some of you won't even bother to listen to this because you have already decided to be offended by a concept that is probably messing up with your sense of morality that solely revolves around your self-centered comfort. However, for the great majority of you, this might be a reassuring perspective, hopefully, especially for those who struggle with an animistic approach to life and their own crafts in a society that is increasingly becoming more self-aware of the impact of its actions upon the world that surrounds us and the issues concerning angering souls and the terrible repercussions on a spiritual level, which very much affects the spiritual existence of us all. I'm not here specifically to talk about veganism. For that, I recommend you to check Ed Winters, which I met in person this year, and a great guy, down to earth, very polite and very humble, and with a tremendous amount of patience, as well as Joey Carbstrong, whose background and process through veganism is not so different from my own, concerning a life of violence and how we struggle to become more empathic human beings, right? I'm here to talk about an issue which has bothered me for some time now. Some of you know that I am a vegan. I've been vegan for 5 years, and I'm on my way to complete my 6th year of being a vegan. It was definitely one of the very few best life decisions I have ever taken. However, for those of us who haven't been vegan since childhood, when we become vegan, there's obviously a whole process of, and a lot of questions concerning certain things we use. Veganism isn't solely about a plant-based diet, but there's a whole multiplicity of reality dealing with several morals and values, focusing on living a more sustainable life and to minimize as much as possible, of course, all the harm we do with our existence. If we can live life without causing unnecessary harm, why wouldn't we? So, one of the things that is bothering me as a vegan is that for 15 years, I've been using a hand drum made out of animal skin. I've been a vegan for 5 years now, as I said, but I still use it. Not for my experimental music project, which, as of the taping of this video, doesn't even have 4 months, but it has been an important companion in terms of my own spiritual path or spirituality and my own craft. Traditional folk magic, let's call it that, witchcraft, which has increasingly become more animistic for me, and as such, the awareness towards persons of the world, including the unseen populations and the entities we often call spirits, has become an important focus of my own spiritual work. Because the more you are aware of the impact of your existence and actions and choices on the world, the choices you make upon the world, that impact, the more we develop our empathy, and we become a lot more careful in the way we treat and behave towards land and its persons, and not just human animal persons, of course, but all persons. Obviously, veganism exists within animism, but an animistic person doesn't have to specifically be vegan or become vegan to be an animist or to become an animist. However, the more you deal with the world and its persons, the more you think about others' consciousness, right? Their own lives, their own communities, their own struggles, wishes, desires, and the way they live and want to live. And if we look into animistic cultures, when it comes to the killing of an animal, this is usually a breaking of taboo. And as such, there's a lot of procedures to rightly propitiate the spirit of the animal to avoid all sorts of harmful outcomes due to breaking taboo. Taking a life and angering the spirits that may seek revenge. Like the book of Graham Harvey on animism, of course, respecting the living world. It ultimately comes down to this in a nutshell. And when face to face with a life that doesn't want to die, doesn't want to be killed, wants to actually live, this has a huge impact in the way we perceive basically everything. But this is a subject I've talked about on other videos before. And by the end of this video, I'll leave 2 suggested videos on the subject you might want to look into. You should definitely look into that. Now, concerning my drum, you may say, Arif, who gives a shit? And that's right. No one actually gave a shit or said anything about it. This is something that bothers me, and I know some of you are passing through the same or similar struggles and questions, and you question yourselves, right? Because there's actually a lot of vegans who are also into witchcraft and in a spiritual endeavor and they ponder about the use of certain materials and objects that have parts of animals or are made from something that comes from an animal, right? By the way, where are my faithful haters? You had a wonderful opportunity to call me an hypocrite by being a vegan and using an animal skin drum. Come on, boys, keep up the pace. But that's the thing, I feel like an hypocrite, and I have that imposter syndrome. I'm vegan, and why do I use a drum made out of animal skin? If I don't kill animals, it would be hypocrisy from my part to pay someone else to kill animals for me, and I just have to buy them in the supermarket and eat them, not having to pass through the most horrible ordeal of taking a life that wants to live, killing a person, right? And solely have the palate pleasure. Practically the same thing here. 15 years ago, I got this drum. I didn't kill the animal. Someone else did it for me. If I really wanted to go traditional and make a bigger and more concise and conscious connection with the spirit animal, I should have been the one to pass through the consequences of spirituality, in such terms of using an animal skin drum, right? I should have been the one to kill and consume the animal flesh and give the right propitiations and make the drum out of its skin and so on and so forth. But I did not do that. This was 15 years ago, 10 years before I became a vegan, so I wasn't considering any of that. Despite all of this, I've created an important and strong connection with my drum, and it has been a very important companion on my spirituality, craft, and even in the way I artistically express myself. Now, even after becoming a vegan, I did not consider this a problem because, in truth, I was not seeing my drum as an animal that was killed, but as an entity with whom I have created a strong relationship with. However, this perception changed in September of 2021, when I've made a post at my Instagram, which, I think it fortunately sort of woke me up concerning what I was using and how this might be a big problem for someone who is a vegan. You see, back in late 2021, I wanted to create awareness concerning a terrible genocide I was only made aware of in that same year. Something I have expressed before a couple of times and in videos as well in the past. The case of murdered indigenous children of British Columbia in Canada, right? And their bodies having been found in graves at residential schools. Don't let this be forgotten, please. Some of the priests that murdered these children are still alive and have fled here into Europe. And this should be a subject we should definitely continue to talk about, to bring some justice at the very least, and obviously to avoid happening again elsewhere to other people. Any human being capable of causing harm to children is not a human being, it is a monster. This situation is something that has greatly troubled me, and I was deeply disturbed and depressed by it. We are talking about over 150,000 indigenous children taken from their homes, over 139 residential schools in Canada, and many more in the US, more than 5,000 children's bodies have been found until 2021 alone. How many more have been found since then? I don't know. Frankly, I don't want to look into it. It's disturbing and frustrating, as there should be justice at the very least. But well, focusing right now on that Instagram post where I appear with my drum, I invited people to drum for the children. Throughout the month of October of 2021, I was drumming for the spirits of the innocent ones. And so I have invited people to do the same thing and drum for these indigenous children and for their spirits. On that post, there were people that did not have drums, and they made comments that my post encouraged them to buy these types of drums and start making something with them. This is when I realized that my idea just had a dark side to it, of sorts. As a vegan, incidentally, I've promoted the slaughter of animals for the creation of these types of drums. Unwillingly, I've encouraged people to participate in the market of cruelty towards animals. My thoughts were, fuck. Concerning the drum, I think I can easily go over it, hopefully, because we are talking about something I've started to use 10 years before becoming vegan, and 3 to 4 years before I have started to actually change my life, taking the first steps and taking my first steps towards reducing my consumption of animals and the use of animal products. It's something from before, but it is important. I still use it. It's like clothes made from animals. Some people, upon becoming vegan, they stop using clothes and footwear and whatnot, which is made from animals, which is understandable, absolutely. And if you have the money to completely change your entire outfit, and you can always donate the clothes you don't use anymore, great, absolutely outstanding. However, for many of us, even being vegan, for as long as some things can still be used and you can save money, you still use them. As a vegan, you can stop buying products made out of animals. But I think you don't have to throw away the things from before, because that ends up being a waste. It's not very sustainable. You can still use them because they are from before and still serve a purpose. Or you can give them to someone in need. In the case of the drum, it is from before. However, I have created a strong relationship with my drum. It is important to me. It is important on my spirituality and in my work and craft. I will still use it for as long as I can. When it's broken, as a vegan, I won't get a new one. It's over concerning drums made out of animal skins. There are loads of substitutes and the sustainable ones as well. This drum, this is part of me. This is part of my journey for the past 15 years. This shall be burned with me. I will only use this one and not any other. There won't be of any more animal skin drums once this one is gone. We use the things from before. We have already, things that have been already made and still serve an important purpose. However, as a vegan, we don't have to continue to participate on such markets, because there's substitutes for practically everything now. However, this issue obviously opened up other questions, and that's where witchcraft enters. I mean, I think I could easily write a book on vegan witchcraft, but I started like a dozen books or so and never got to finish them. There's funnier stuff to do with life. If anyone writes a book on vegan witchcraft, let me know. I'll buy it and review it. But anyway, concerning witchcraft, this kind of raises the question on the use of animal parts in witchcraft. As a vegan and practicing traditional folk magic, what do you do? Should or should you not continue with the use of animal parts and objects made out of animals? I think this depends a great deal on your approach and what are you actually using and where you are getting it. The point that witchcraft is a pragmatic expression of animism, we are then aware that what we call spirits or parts of spirits can reside in various things. It is precisely from there that we begin with the use of certain materials and certain parts of animals, for the power they have, for what they represent, and for the essence of consciousness and spirit that still lives in them. And then also the whole issue of objects without spirit or personality, that from the moment there is a creation and a consecration of an object and an entire ritual, we deposit spirit in objects, we give identity, and they stop being mere objects and begin to be understood as entities of their own, with their identity and their power, etc. This is where the whole issue of talismans, amulets, charms, the issue of fetishism, etc. comes in. Attached to this comes the idea that if animals have a conscience and spirit, if they are understood as persons of the world, then taking a life is taboo. but can be done in certain extreme moments of life, in certain extreme situations, like avoiding starvation, the sacrifice of a life for another. Animism is quite clear in this. Hunting is not a sport. Hunting and killing is an act of sacrifice, and every act of sacrifice is therefore a ritual or needs a ritual. And the whole method of propitiation of the spirit of the soul from whom the body is being robbed and consumed. Animism is also quite clear that the consumption of what is killed is the consumption of souls. The right propitiation or ritual or both can anger the spirit from whom the body was robbed, or it can anger the community of spirits or of persons of the killed individual, and they might seek revenge. Ritual and the right propitiation of souls is necessary to avoid angry spirits, because the consequences of spirits that seek revenge can be devastating for the human community and for the environment. Killing is taboo, however. Again, in extreme moments, it is necessary, and spirit revenge can be avoided through the right actions, through the ceremony towards the killed individual. If we take into consideration that the animal industry tortures billions of animals, and every year 80 billion land animals alone are murdered, individuals, right? Spirits, persons that have been born, lived, and died in terrible conditions and in much suffering and harm, misery, and sadness. We are talking about billions of angry spirits, many of which can indeed seek revenge. Now, you think the slaughtering of lives in the animal industry cares about the right conduct and propitiation of souls? I mean, look at the world around us. Look at the state of the world around us and the environment, which obviously can easily be explained through science, facts, the very active, destructive conduct of the human being towards the planet and its lives and all persons. Animal industry is one of the greatest problems we face that is actively causing harm to the planet for a variety of reasons. However, understandably, there's a lack of a focus on a spiritual level, something that indigenous peoples are well aware of, but not the most or the majority of the world that doesn't live an indigenous life and doesn't have an indigenous animistic perception. On a spiritual level, we are talking about billions of souls that have the right to seek revenge. Think of yourself as a person, an individual who has been of freedom, spending your whole life tortured and sick and violently molested, beaten, and then robbed of your life. If you could, as a spirit, wouldn't you seek revenge for such an unfair, brutal, and most traumatic life treatment? Now think of 8 billion land animals every year and at least 1 trillion fish killed every year for commercial use. Those seem to be just numbers, but think of these numbers as individuals. How many unpropitiated souls that may seek revenge and the impact that has on the world and its persons on a spiritual level, which always affects in a very physical way, the sickness of death throughout the land. So now, with this in mind, let's reflect upon the animal part we are using in traditional witchcraft. How are we using them? Where did we get them? How did the animal die? Natural death? Was it killed? Were there any propitiations of the soul? Any ceremonies in honor of the killed animal? Unfortunately, in the modern world, spirituality has become a business and it is an industry. Even if you are not vegan, you should definitely care about the animals and animal parts you might be using in traditional witchcraft or in your own spirituality, spiritual endeavors, in any other form. Let me give you an example. I met a woman. Was this woman, our house is full of animal bones, mostly skulls. It's not just for decoration, but it's also for her own craft, or so she says. She lives in the city, like a huge city, completely surrounded, just heavy urban scenery for miles in every direction. Where is she getting so many animal bones and skulls? Especially of animals literally that literally don't exist in our own country. She's getting them online, and there's no problem with that. Now, the problem with this is that we don't really know, in the majority of cases, of course, how these people get all these animals in the first place to sell their parts online. Some of them become a huge business, and it makes you wonder if these people spend their whole life in the wilds gathering dead animals, cleaning their corpses and selling their body parts. I mean, you really have to spend a tremendous amount of time out there, find so many dead animals and sell them worldwide to thousands of people in the spiritual business. I mean, I remember.
So yeah, check out Aerith Harger's YouTube. He's got a lot of videos. Super cool dude. Oh, am I still? Nope, I'm not. What's up, Bracky?
I was just hanging out. I had to make some last
God
minute
damn it.
adjustments. Is it still cutting out?
Yeah. It isn't on. It's only cutting out to us.
You
So we'll
guys
just
can hear it,
we'll
but
just
we
do
just
the
can't.
show, but not interact. I guess
We'll just have to fake our way through the interactions.
we'll just talk in the chat.
Yeah.
But allegedly, it's running smooth. I don't know how. Do you keep seeing the pig?
Yeah. I mean, not when the video was going, but now. Yeah, I see it in the background. Not coming through at all. But oh. Now I just see the pig. Curious. Not a bad idea, Race. That's a cute pig. I can't. Oh, there you guys are. Rough weekend for internet.
We're gonna find out that you fuck with the wrong one, boy!
Mark Bassett
We're
can
not
yell
in your
at the
fucking
wrong
meat
way.
industry propaganda cult.
Very fitting for the background, the thumbnail for this one. Very true, Race Liver. Oh, you guys are muted. I can't hear you guys.
The ego is not even aware of shadow behavior and thus has no possibility of commanding it. Under these conditions, the shadow is autonomous and may express itself in inexplicable moods, irritability, and cruelty. Throughout his writing, Jung refers to the importance of developing awareness of the shadow in psychotherapy and its projections in the individual's life. Although the shadow is usually perceived as negative, it can also be positive. In fact, exploring our shadow gives us access to many positive qualities. Jung writes that the shadow displays a number of good qualities, such as normal instincts, appropriate reactions, realistic insights, creative impulses, etc. One of Jung's closest collaborators, Marie-Louise von Franz, writes, "The shadow is not necessarily always an opponent. In fact, he is exactly like any human being with whom one has to get along, sometimes by giving in, sometimes by resisting, sometimes by giving love. Whatever the situation requires, the shadow becomes hostile only when he's ignored or misunderstood." The shadow contains all sorts of qualities, strengths, and potentials, which, if remain unexplored, give us a state of impoverishment in our personality, creating unconscious snags which inhibit the growth and embodiment of these good qualities that lie dormant in our psyche. For instance, a person might believe that being assertive is being rude or aggressive, losing the qualities of confidence and the ability to speak up for himself in an honest and respectful way, which in turn may lead to less productivity, make it more difficult to get a raise or job promotion, struggle with money, and so on. So, when a person encounters an assertive person, deep down he feels resentment and guilt, which makes his shadow blacker and denser. These valuable aspects ought to be assimilated into actual experience and not repressed. It is up to the ego to give up its pride. We also encounter a shadow in our dreams. As a person of the same sex as the dreamer, it is what seems to be a criticism of our character from the unconscious, an inner judge of your own being that reproaches you, and the result is usually embarrassed silence. We must identify the contents of the shadow and integrate them into our personality. This is the process of the realization of the shadow, also known as shadow work. Here begins the painfully and lengthy work of
Shadow
self-education.
work.
One must enter into long and difficult negotiations with
Mark
the shadow,
Bassio's
a
false
work,
shadow.
we might say, that is the psychological equivalent of the labors of Hercules. Through shadow work, one can observe one's shadow outwardly by watching one's emotional reactions and being radically honest about one's interactions with others, and inwardly by exploring one's dreams. This allows one to become enlightened and reduce the shadow's destructive potential, not so much as it were by waging war against the darkness, but by bringing the darkness to the light to the darkness. As Jung writes, there is no light without shadow, and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. One must not strive for perfection, but rather wholeness of personality. The lifelong process of individuation creates a balance between one's conscious and unconscious realms, aligning the ego to the self, the totality of one's personality. However scary or dark it is to confront our shadow, finding truth brings relief. Discernment of the truth is the process of authenticity, a painstaking excavation into the depths of our being to explore possibilities and limitations, distortions, and the buried and often forgotten parts of ourselves and abilities. Most people, however, are too indolent to think deeply about even those small aspects of their behavior of which they are conscious, let alone to consider how the unconscious affects them. The shadow can also consist of factors that stem from a source outside the individual's personal life. Here's when we stumble upon the collective shadow, the dark side or the unknown or little known aspects of society and culture. It consists of that which opposes our shared and collective values. The collective shadow refers to a huge, multidimensional, often horrifying yet elusive aspect of human life, to an immensity of harm inflicted by human beings upon each other and the natural world, and to the vast after effects of such harm in subsequent generations. We find the collective shadow in the projection of darkness and inferiority, in violence and oppression, in the invisibility of current suffering, in the denial of current responsibility. While collective shadow material may be acted out brutally in wars, massacres, and genocides, it may also hide under the often attractive cloaks of missionary activity, such as mandating the use of particular languages, an Orwellian reality that we are experiencing in the present time. As is the nature of all shadow material, whether individual or collective, its existence and influence may be pervasive without being obvious. The collective shadow manifests outwardly in atrocities, persecution, physical suffering, sickness, poverty, malnutrition, alcoholism, crime, the death of cultures, and so on. It may also manifest more inwardly amid the complexities of each individual psyche as hatred toward oneself, one's heritage, and one's culture, depression and feelings of impotence, the desire for revenge so that others might experience something like one's own pain, etc. The collective shadow is what has historically been labeled evil. In the Christian tradition, it would be the devil, and someone who's possessed by the devil loses his human quality and acquires a demonic nature. Our primary response to evil, for Jung, must be the quest for self-knowledge, for wholeness, which presumes the assimilation of shadow material. The individual must know relentlessly how much good he can do and what crimes he's capable of. When there is an issue known in a particular society, it can be called a shadow issue. There's evidence of denial, projection, and a lack of taking individual and collective responsibility. Therefore, taking responsibility morally, politically, and spiritually is particularly crucial. The courage with which we bear our darkness frees others from having to carry it for us. For instance, to respond to examples of massive historical suffering, wars, genocide, holocaust, pervasive oppression, etc., the effects of which persist. As human beings, we have much to learn in that regard. Denial, often connected with a wish to get on with things and put the past behind us, seems the most common approach and usually the first reaction. There are and have been many attempts deal with difficult, painful pasts through public apologies for supporting atrocities, repentance, reparation payments after wars, pilgrimages to places of great suffering, etc. But how do we deal with the past in such a way that the integration of the shadow occurs deeply and broadly within a population rather than simply at a symbolic level through leaders or policies? Remembering and speaking what often seems unspeakable is inevitably a painful process for victims and perpetrators, bystanders and witnesses. Any such process can only be regarded as successful or reasonably complete once the pain, outrage, betrayal, suffering, and all other feelings have been voiced and heard, and once responsibility has been taken. Truth-telling is both the most desirable and the most feasible way to grapple with a difficult past. One example of a terrible mass psychosis represented by the collective shadow is Nazi Germany, where people fell into the demonic nature through the personal shadow. They joined the Nazi party and did worse things than they could ever have imagined or would have done under normal social conditions. In this sense, the personal shadow
Joined
is the
any
bridge
government
to the
or
collective
army.
shadow. Therefore, it is important to
Just
solve
those
one's inner
guys.
conflicts first, one's personal shadow, so that one does not fall into the collective shadow unconsciously. One may then later influence other people, and society will be better off as a whole. If we practice mindfulness, we will know how to look deeply into the nature of war and with our insight wake people up so that together we can avoid repeating the same horrors again and again. The war is in us, but is also in everyone. Everything is ready to explode, and we are all co-responsible. To summarize, we must first acknowledge our personal shadow and enter into long and difficult negotiations with it, being honest with ourselves and our interactions with others, watching our emotional reactions and exploring our dreams, in order to not become passive victims of our shadow and of our unconscious projections, allowing us to rescue the good qualities that lie dormant within us, which improves our lives and the lives of those around us. We can then be consciously aware of the collective shadow and not prey to it, and take responsibility to address the denial of important issues and the lack of individual and collective initiative. The courage of bearing our darkness brings relief to others, as telling the truth is the most desirable way to deal with a difficult past, rather than dismissing the atrocities and having the shadow grow blacker until it can grow no more, and history repeats itself. I hope you enjoyed this video on the shadow. You can support the channel.
So yeah, a lot of our truther friends, a lot of people I know think that because all they do all day is scream about the government, that kind of just like means that they're a moral person and they're right and all that stuff across the board. And we see that a lot in some of the people that get more popular, some of the louder screamers of the group, and some of the people that what? Oh yeah, the people that become celebritarians, quote unquote, in our movement. They tend to not actually do in their lives what they speak about, or they're omitting massive amounts of information that's very important. And a lot of these people, a lot of time since the show's come out, we kind of naturally gravitated towards being very critical towards people in the One Great Work Network, because they're supposed to be the ones that know better. But the more I see, the more of these videos I watch from these guys, the more outward pointing, blame government. I'm just going to talk about government all day. And that means I know more than everyone else. And I'm the guru and I'm this shaman guy. And, all I see is our dudes stuck in adolescence, still living like a satanic lifestyle. If you don't start taking care, if you can't take care of yourself and you can't take care of the people around you, like, then you're still a child. You haven't become a man yet. And all this, you know, and that includes the animal kingdom. That's for sure. Yeah, what do you think, Brack? Are you coming in there?
I guess we'll find out.
Brack looking like Weird Al.
Yeah, I got my hair looking a little fancy today.
But yeah, so I'm gonna probably move the most of this presentation to next week, since since this is not working very well.
Yeah.
But we'll just watch some more videos. We can watch this video of Bracky's big brother.
Who's that?
Topic again.
Have you seen this one yet, Bracky?
Can't go away.
Oh.
But recently I was saying.
Yeah, I think I saw this one. Some good insights in this one.
With oil versus without oil, and really see what the difference is. And then a few hours later, I hopped on PubMed and found this very from the Journal of the American Heart Association doing just that, in particular with extra virgin olive oil. I wish thinking of a study and having it magically appear worked all the time. Like if I might actually worked out hard, would I get buff? Nope, not on PubMed. I know a lot of people still think of me as the guy that made the oil, the vegan killer video. And while I still stand by a lot of what is in that video, I have made several follow-ups talking about, for example, context of whether talking about somebody who is young and healthy with no disease versus somebody who has severe cardiovascular disease and recently had a stroke, etc. I even made a video about when people would benefit from eating oil a lot, as well as making a oil ranking video. And I will say extra virgin olive oil did quite well on that. But we have to remember where a lot of that anti-oil sentiment started. And that was, Dr. Esselstyn on stage saying no oil, even extra virgin olive oil, when talking about treating his cardiovascular patients. And of course, he's seen astounding results putting people on a whole food vegan diet without oil. And lightning fast reminder, that was this study where he had 177 patients over the years stay the diet, and of them they had a 0.6% rate of adverse events. Well, the 20 people that quit had a 60%. It's not perfect math, but it's also incredible math. But of course, the idea to stay away from extra virgin olive oil seen as like insane, especially as part of that health Mediterranean diet, etc. We'll get more into that. But I did even caution against that in my video. We'll elaborate more on the nuances of that and newer data as well. But my concern was, look, if you're really pounding down some extra virgin olive oil, even you can start, adding up the grams of saturated fat, which we'll look at here in a second with the study. And of course, saturated fat raises LDL, which is causally linked to atherosclerosis. So the study at hand was asking, is there an LDL difference? That was their main question. However, they looked at a bunch of other markers. We get some inflammation marker results, glucose results as well, which are super interesting. But let's just get right to it. It is this study, which was published very recently, and it was on 40 individuals and is a randomized crossover trial. These subjects averaged at the age of around 65, and they all started off just on a standard meat including diet. And then they were randomized to one of two groups, either a group that went whole food vegan with high olive oil to start and then switched over to a whole food vegan low olive oil, or the exact opposite, starting at low and then going to high olive oil. Now, obviously, the oil itself, which has zero fiber, is not a whole food. So it was whole food plus a processed food in one case. And so they started, and then they actually had a 1 week washout period where they just returned to whatever diet they wanted, and then they switched those diets. And it was the case that they didn't get told to add any exercise. They did monitor exercise. We'll talk about that in a bit. They also didn't control their calories, which is worth mentioning, and then also gave them cooking classes, which I think is really cool for a study. But you might be wondering, how much is high olive oil? How much is low olive oil? Well, in the high group, they were given 4 tablespoons per day. And in the low group, they were told to stay under 1 teaspoon. They were essentially trying to be no oil, but did as much as—
I don't have a sword yet.
And just to put that into context, 4 tablespoons of olive oil is about 475 calories when you're supposed to be eating around 2,000 calories per day. But then a teaspoon at that threshold for the low oil group is only 40 calories worth of olive oil. You can see about a 10-fold or more difference in calories from oil here, which is worth noting. And this is where we can talk about saturated fat, adding up a little bit here because the 4 tablespoons of olive oil has about 7.5 grams of saturated fat. It's about 1.5 slices of cheddar cheese, for example. And now for the results, it says everybody quit after realizing they were tricked into being vegan. I'm joking. Actually, they boasted quite high adherence, but the results in terms of that LDL or bad cholesterol was that in both of the whole food vegan groups, high or low olive oil, we saw a lowering in LDL from baseline, but it was more of a lowering in the low olive oil group. And this is where the results are a bit dramatic, is when they were switching between high and low. Comparing that from this chart, we can see that from high to low olive oil, there was a 13-point drop in LDL. And from low to high, we saw a 16-point increase in LDL. I mean, these numbers are no joke. It's LDL, not LOL. And this is where when you're asking the question, is olive oil healthy? It completely depends on context. As I said in the past, replacing animal fat, and as the study says, replacing animal fat like butter and mayonnaise with olive oil is obviously going to be an improvement. But, does it have an advantage over other oils? They even say in the study, hey, no, it doesn't appear to lower mortality compared to other oils. But here, in terms of the #1 risk factor for the #1 killing disease, it's not looking great. For this high amount, we got to have some nuance here, because there's a huge spectrum between 4 tablespoons and virtually 0. Yeah, it is a case that you probably could eat 4 tablespoons pretty dang easily, throw 2 tablespoons into a salad, and then end up consuming 2 tablespoons by stir frying a bunch of veggies at a couple meals. Like, I don't think it's that hard to do, but it is also the case that we can infer a bit of a spectrum from this. Yeah, 1 tablespoon of olive oil might make like a 2 or 3 point difference. Again, that's speculation. And then another one may make 2 or 3 more, 2 or 3 more after that. And now for a quick break with today's sponsor, Fume. You might have not heard of flavored air, which is now a leading alternative to vaping and smoking. Now you have, because Fume is one of those devices. I've actually been going around Europe looking so cool. You can spin this little air into. You can also chew and fidget with it for free. Lots of people that have tried Fume, and perhaps the next success story. So what do the researchers say about these findings? Well, they say, quote, they suggest that extra virgin olive oil may not be the beneficial additive of a Mediterranean diet. In addition of it, after following a low extra virgin olive oil pattern could impede further LDL reduction. So really a missed opportunity. But this is where I'm sad that they didn't look at artery function or flow mediated dilation, because it was a study that I've shown in the past by Vogel that showed worse artery function, but we're at a point where it's like there's that one study and then just a ton of studies showing the opposite. Pretty robust evidence showing that people on a standard diet given olive oil improves their flow mediated dilation. And the quality of olive oil is huge, with this 2021 study showing that high phenolic olive oil improved artery function slightly, while normal olive oil made it worse. So that would have been so interesting to see if there was a difference in artery function between these groups, high versus low olive oil. But of course, there are foods that probably won't raise your LDL diet, but would improve flow mediated dilation, which we'll cover later. But then I will say that in both of these groups, the LDL reduction during that second half, once they crossed over after the washout period, wasn't as compelling. It was a smaller reduction. And from the supplementary material, it's clear that this is because during their washout period on a standard diet, their LDL was shooting back up, make it all the way back up, but it was still lower from the original period. Still, this is a testament to how effective the diet is. Just look at that. However, it's also worth mentioning that despite fiber lowering cholesterol at about 1 milligram per gram, the fiber intake was roughly the same between the two vegan groups. So no evidence that fiber made the difference. All right, now let's look to some of the other results. For example, inflammation levels and your glucose levels. And they say, quote, going from low to high oil led to an increase in lipids, quote, glycemic measures and C-reactive protein. In contrast, the removal led to a decrease in these measures, saying that lower is optimal for lowering cardiovascular disease risk. But I want to be clear, C-reactive protein, that inflammation marker, did lower from baseline in both, but it was only statistically significantly lower in the low oil group in a short period of time, which is awesome. And this is just another study showing that a vegan diet lowers inflammation. And this is another study that shows that switching from a meat-based diet to a vegan diet leads to weight loss. We're talking about a 4 kilogram weight loss with the low olive oil group, losing about 0.7 more kilograms in the high group. Note the calorie intake was significantly lower in the low oil group. So one criticism could be maybe the results were from lower calories. How do you know it was the oil? Have all the answers, but oil is the most calorie dense food that we eat at 9 calories per gram. It has 0 fiber, so doesn't trigger satiation through that way. But speaking of fat, that brings me to one of the criticisms of the study, that it wasn't actually low fat like all of these plant-based doctors are saying that it should be. Even in the study itself, they say that, 10 to 15% or less of total calories from fat, is what a low fat whole food vegan diet is. So where did they land? Well, they landed at 48 and 32% of total energy intake from fat in the high and low olive oil phases. I think it's about people's dietary goals, but I personally don't push the low fat thing really hard. I think avocados in most people's context would be absolutely fine. I mean, I've yet to see them do anything bad. There are valid concerns that with higher fat, you might more easily increase overall calorie consumption, which can raise things like triglycerides, etc. But I just can't be too afraid of these things where, for example, the low olive oil group got their fat from to get up to that 32%. We're talking avocados, nuts, seeds, and olives, which they say retain inherent dietary fiber and intact phytochemicals. And that's why case by case makes sense to me. And there's some people that go on a whole food vegan diet, low fat diet, and they end up getting a BMI that I personally think is too low and would be associated with negative health outcomes on its own. So this brings us to the question, is there something that people might be able to eat to also increase that flow mediated dilation, that artery function, or at least hope to, but not raise LDL? Well, how about avocados? I just mentioned from this study, they didn't see an increase in flow-mediated dilation, but they said, their artery function was pretty good to begin with. And then we have the topic of walnuts, which I think are a great contender. For example, this meta-analysis found that they did improve that flow-mediated dilation without raising LDL. However, the walnut industry had its nuts all over the funding of these studies. But it is a case that one that isn't funded by the walnut industry, like this one, did find the same results, improved artery function. But one walnut commission study that compared olive oil to walnuts found that flow-mediated dilation was worse after the olive meal than after the walnut meal. So walnuts won. However, they didn't mention the quality of the olive oil. It's biased. They probably used like total crap. But the idea here is that if there is truth to even a vegan who's already getting phytochemicals going and getting increased artery function from olive oil, there's other places you can also get antioxidants that do the same thing. Walnuts, even straight up olives themselves, which would be really hard to eat 475 calories of. Some of you are like, is that a challenge? And for a couple final details here, we have exercise. It's interesting. They didn't tell them to increase their exercise, but they tracked their exercise. And we can see that there's no statistically significant difference between the different olive oil groups, but we can see that exercise trended upwards a little bit, and in fact trended highest, non-statistically significantly, but still highest in the low olive oil group, which pushes what I've been saying all along, like where if you are eating those whole carbs and you're losing weight, etc., like they did in this case, then you're going to be more likely to want to get out and move, which I think conflates the whole healthy user bias thing when you become a healthy user from your healthy diet. And then finally, just in case you're wondering about funding, I mean, what evil source would fund this? Would it be like the anti-olive lobby? I don't know. We have a foundation here. There doesn't appear to be any meaningful conflict of interest. I think they were just curious about what would happen. This has been a bit of a contentious topic over the years. In the end, this is a very interesting study. I've gotten a lot of flack for poo-pooing oil in the past. And again, I've tried to add nuance to that, but most people just saw the original video. But in a way, this makes me feel a little bit vindicated. Yeah, like under the exact context that I'm talking about, we have a missed opportunity if you are eating enough olive oil. However, I can't help but wonder if 1 tablespoon would actually make a difference. And my gut instinct is no. However, if you're somebody who just suffered some severe heart event and want to do everything that you can, I think that's the angle that Dr. Esselstyn is coming from. He's like, anything that might create an issue, let's just get it out of there and be safe. But for like younger, healthy people eating a vegan diet, should they be deathly afraid of a tablespoon of olive oil? I really don't think so. And so I'm sorry if I made anybody feel that way, but I still stand by the idea that obesity in a vegan context is going to be mainly driven by oil consumption. In certain cases, soft drink consumption might be doing it. But of course, obesity increases risk of a ton of diseases. And so, keeping oil low is awesome. I think still. So yeah, it wasn't a perfect study, but it was still a randomized crossover trial, which is as much as I can ask for. At this point, would have been cool if it was bigger. Would have been cool if it had a longer washout period. Would have been cool if they did artery function test as well. But amazing results. Keep that LDL down out there. And of course, if you would like to try Fume, you can click the link.
You had to get that little puff in. You guys are muted.
Oil's dumb.
Oil's dumb.
It only aids in cooking. It doesn't taste good. It's not good for you. You don't need. That was kind of a cool study because they took two vegans. And obviously, vegans, two groups of vegans. Vegans have less intake of other junk fats and stuff. So it's probably a cleaner test subject testing vegans for the oil stuff.
Well, and it showed that it was because they weren't vegans, right? So it showed that washout period of them going back to their meat eating diet. So it's just interesting to show that the whole oil thing, it's relative, right? So if someone's replacing their animal fats and say meat consumption with some plant fat, some plant oil, it can be beneficial.
Yeah.
If you are high risk of cardiovascular disease, et cetera, and you're wanting to do something that's as quick as possible to make you as healthy as possible, then yeah, you want to go no oil. If you're looking to lose weight, etc., no oil. So it was.
If you're healthy.
Yeah. Should you be deathly afraid of oil? No. Seed or mustard oils, the cause of of the declining testosterone rate and fertility and all the problems in the world.
Yeah, everything that's wrong with the world.
Yeah, the first time me and Allie hung out, I brought over to cook and I brought oil. And she was like, no. I was like, you don't cook with oil? Like, and you eat sugar? What the fuck is your problem? What are you trying to pull here, lady?
Yeah. Just testing the waters.
Yeah.
Messing with you.
Yeah. And obviously, yeah. So replacing all these clowns saying that tallow and beef fat and all these oils and stuff are safer than any oils are fooling themselves. Butter and animal fat is highly nasty, cancer-causing junk. Yeah.
That's where you're getting the real estrogen from.
Yeah. What he said.
Whatever I said.
What Braxton said.
You got some
What Race Lever said, exactly.
Yeah. He knows what's up.
This was a cool video we watched.
Joe Rogan is one of the most vocal critics of Big Pharma in the world.
One of the most egregious offenses by the pharmaceutical drug companies is distorting the data.
Which is why it is so flabbergasting that someone as suspicious of the medical industry as Joe Rogan would take a $250 to $400 million Big Pharma buyout from one of the largest corporate conglomerates in the world, one that recently tried to acquire the drug maker GlaxoSmithKline. Yeah, you heard me right. The loudest critic of the pharmaceutical industry is also in bed with it.
When it comes to things like drugs, and especially when it comes to antidepressants, and when it comes to these things that they're advertising constantly on television, constantly on YouTube, just constantly, the amount of money
I've never seen them on
is
YouTube.
so extraordinary. Advertising for pharmaceutical drugs is illegal in every country in the world except for New Zealand and the United States.
The drug companies were very willing to make a buck doing it.
Yeah.
He doesn't trust vaccine science. He claims that pharmaceutical companies are some of the dirtiest businesses in the world.
It's all profit.
And believes that drug sellers suppress alternative health treatments to bolster their profits.
No one has ever said, you've got to trust these people that have the biggest fucking criminal fines in U.S. history. These people that have been lying to us left and right, been tried and convicted for lying.
Any regular listener to his show knows that Rogan believes that Big Pharma is part of a vast dark money conspiracy that manipulates the public for its own financial gain.
Look, I never thought I would be in the center of any sort of controversy about pharmaceutical drugs or about health care.
For the purposes of this video, now I'm not going to fact check those particular claims other than to say that pharmaceutical companies do indeed have
My Jesus
immensely
flow going.
I can understand why Rogan and much of his audience is so suspicious of their motives. Let me break it down, and it's going to get a little wild, so buckle up. Back in 2010, the now famous podcaster Aubrey Marcus was working at a company called Fleshlight. His stepfather founded the business
Who?
back in 1998 as, quote, a device for discrete sperm collection. Now, if you're not familiar with it, the Fleshlight is
Oh,
a male
gross.
masturbation aid. When I began this report, I didn't think I was going to go down this particular rabbit hole, but I can say that the suggested videos on my YouTube page are now much more colorful than they were just last week. Here's what you can expect if you were to click over to the Fleshlight page and you don't want the YouTube algorithm to follow you along the way. Anyway, after his time at Fleshlight, Marcus was looking to branch out and took a $100,000 loan from a friend to found a company that sold hangover cures. It didn't work out. He lost almost the entire investment. By his account, he took his last $20,000 on a Hail Mary pitch to push a cognitive enhancer that he called Alpha Brain. It turned out to be a really smart move. He teamed up with Joe Rogan, who became a partner in his venture, and soon the stock sold out like immediately. They were onto something. Alpha Brain became the lead product for their new company, On It.
That's Alpha Brain. That's on
I'm
its
really
that's
feeling it.
the black label Alpha Brain.
Over the next 5 years, On It grew into a Fortune 500 company with 180 employees. Now, I know what you're thinking. How did a former professional masturbator who failed at selling hangover cures invent something that makes people's brains work better almost overnight and with almost no investment? Well, here's how he describes it.
I came to you and I said, Joe, what would be the formula that you would like the most, that you would use the most? And you said, you thought about it for a second. And you said, a nootropic. I'd like a cognitive enhancer. I said, okay. And got to work. Started talking to the doctors and medical professionals I knew. Started doing research. Started going back and knowing what had worked for me. Talked about what had worked for you. And then some 6 to 8 months later, we had a sample batch of what was going to be Alpha Brain.
I don't think I need to tell you that this isn't really how drug development is supposed to work. You don't just call up your friends to get some chemical names and invent a miracle. Rogan says as much over and over again when critiquing the speedy development of the COVID-19 vaccine.
If you look at the COVID vaccine, for example, they sold us something that wasn't accurate. They said that it was going to stop transmission. They said that it was going to stop infection. It did neither of those things.
Yeah.
They also said that it was going to offer long-lasting protection. It did not. It just didn't. And they said that it was safe and effective. How can they know that? It's a new product. And you're administering it to hundreds of millions of people without a lengthy trial period like they do with every other drug.
Alpha Brain has a few ingredients in it. There's L-theanine, there's oat straw extract, and bacopa, as well as something called alpha GPC.
And soy.
Of shocks, also endorsed by Andrew Huberman.
Alpha GPC, which is essentially a choline donor, acts in the pathways related to the neuromodulator acetylcholine and can enhance focus.
Now, it gets even more bizarre than that, because while trying to sell the product, Marcus and Rogan, they completely redefined the very idea of what science is from the ground up.
How do you think these things got extracted? Like, they got extracted because of science.
Right.
Like, it's not pseudoscience. It's actual science. Like, there's only one way you're going to get choline or vitamin B12 or any nutrient. You're going to have to get someone who's way fucking smarter than you, figure out how to make this stuff.
Totally.
And these aren't like imaginary compounds that people have invented on their own and then tried to sell as snake oil.
The problem, of course, is that the supplement industry is basically unregulated. Rogan may feel that he can make efficacy claims of mental improvement because what he's selling is a supplement, and the claims that you can make around supplements are just so much more lax than what you can make for pharmaceuticals. I have done a bunch of videos on grift in the supplement industry and the insane regulations around them, and you should check out this playlist, The Liars, Cheats, and Charlatans of the Griftoverse, particularly my videos on AG1 and Feel Free, but I'm not going to get into that too much here. And I guess Since I'm talking about the other things that I do on this channel, I'm going to give you a very short, under 1 minute plug for why you should consider supporting the work I do. In the last few weeks, this channel has absolutely exploded, adding more than 9,000 new subs in just 3 weeks. And that support, it means a lot to me. And to keep up the way, in order to bolster their results, Rogan and Marcus ran their own small clinical trial that showed what they claimed were significant improvements in mental acuity after a short run with their $59 supplement bottle. To put it succinctly, the study was terrible. In fact, in many ways, it showed the exact opposite results that it claimed were scientifically backed during their endless promotion of the product. Compared to the placebo, Alpha Brain only had statistically significant effects on 3 out of 27 categories. In all of the other cases, the placebo was the same or even better than the active group. If this wasn't a bought and paid for study, the whole thing would have been thrown out. Instead, Marcus and Rogan doubled down on those tenuous results and made a fortune. As an aside, I need to note that that word significant in statistics is not the same as how we use ordinary English, where it is a synonym for substantial. In statistics, significant only means better than random chance, which doesn't mean that the effects are meaningful or even clinically important. This is a huge problem across the board in science communication, and I should probably do a whole video on it down the line. Let me know if you want to see that down in the comments. All of this together is at least part of the reason that Alpha Brain is currently being sued in New York for making false business claims. According to a complaint filed in April 2023, Alpha Brain's ubiquitous marketing claims are, quote, blatantly false and deceptive because even its own flawed clinical study revealed that Alpha Brain does not improve memory, focus, and mental processing speed. The suit goes on to explain how Alpha Brain generates a staggering $100 million a year in revenue. The lawyers say that Alpha Brain violated the laws in New York when its founders claimed over and over again that the supplement actually works. Because even when you're an experienced grifter, you can't say exactly this.
These extracts have been proven to be beneficial.
The reality is that the supplement has no clinically proven benefits. Their own scientific study contradicts their claims, and that's why right now Onnit has removed several
And it's 90% soy
products, muscle builders, and creatine mostly from the New York market, lest they be sued again for making even more false claims. To recap to this point in the video, the scion of the pocket pussy fortune failed to sell his hangover supplements, but succeeded in making a brain enhancer once he teamed up with the most popular podcaster
a good picture for that.
The company generated outrageous profits on shaky science and got sued along the way. But the real twist in the story happens in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, at a time when Rogan was doing everything in his power to cast doubt on Fauci and the CDC response, at the same time that he was selling this bogus brain pill. In April 2021, Marcus and Rogan decided to sell their company so they could work on other ventures. And according to an interview on Onnit's website, Marcus is quoted as saying, as part of the Unilever family, Onnit is now going to bring its principles and values to Unilever so that they can take on some of what makes us great. Unilever is one of the largest consumer conglomerates in the world. It sells soap, supplements, food, and pharmaceutical drugs. It attempted to purchase GlaxoSmithKline a few years ago and is pretty much the definition of everything that someone who is skeptical of capitalism fears and is critical of. So when Marcus and Rogan sold Onnit to Unilever for an astonishing, undisclosed 9-figure sum that is reported to be between $250 and $400 million, well, maybe it's worth considering some of the inherent contradictions between what Rogan claims he believes in and what his actions actually demonstrate.
They sold us something that wasn't accurate.
After all, if Rogan is a critic of big money grubbing companies using fake science to sell poorly tested vaccines to the planet in some big government conspiracy, then shouldn't he be above doing the exact same thing himself? In fact, well, now that I think about it, perhaps Rogan's criticism of the CDC and the FDA are really reflections of his own business decisions.
When it comes to things like drugs, and
does it seem like Joe Rogan's doing shadow work?
especially when it comes to antidepressants and when it comes to these things that they're advertising constantly on television, constantly on YouTube, just constantly. The amount of money is so extraordinary.
If he is so comfortable cashing in on pseudoscience and snake oil, perhaps he thinks that it's just the way that the world is, and that if he can't beat them, he should join them.
It's all profit.
Moral
If that's the truth,
relativism.
then it's a cynical truth. And it says a lot about how much trust anyone should put into Joe Rogan or his partner in assisted masturbation, Aubrey Marcus.
Snake oil.
Yeah, snake oil is another one.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much to all of my supporters on Patreon.
Yeah, so I guess he took Joe tried to be Alex Jones and surpassed him. You got to sell supplements if you have a podcast.
What are the ones that Alex Jones sells again?
He sold what do they put? Iodine packets for nuclear fallout.
That's right.
You take the packets, it doesn't affect you as much. He sold some funny stuff.
Ultimate prepper stuff.
At least better than, I mean, iodine has many uses. At least you're getting something out of it, not
Alpha
some
Brain is trash, literally. Just
soy protein tablet
with like caffeine or
for
whatever.
$60.
Yeah, and that's perfect for the keto people because they need caffeine just to stay awake.
Did you ever have a fleshlight, Braxton?
No, gladly stayed away from
Don't
that
all
trend.
juggalos have fleshlights?
I don't know. I've always been out of touch with the like
fleshlight in rigging.
My other pastime. No.
We got to keep this family friendly, remember.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Come on now.
Calm down, rigger Braxton.
Getting a little rigorous.
Losers.
Fucking losers.
Very family friendly quotes from Mark Passio.
So last week I was trying to show this, but I backed myself out so far that you couldn't hear me talk anymore. So I'm gonna go over it again. So these guys who throw this this data around, this Harvard study about the carnivore diet, they seem to think that it's like of the same caliber or beyond the caliber of all the last 200 years of meta science that we have, the highest caliber of science. We have, redundancies in place in meta studies that weeds out bad information. There's so much going on here, and they have studies. So this study really is Dr. Baker, Sean Baker, the carnivore king, I think is what his actual name is. I kept calling him the carnivore doctor, but he called himself the carnivore king. So he got 2,000 of the people on his mailing list to self-submit information to a guy who then wrote an article, like put all the information together and wrote a very short article, which is the lowest form of information in the hierarchy of scientific evidence. In November 2021, a Harvard study based on self-reported data from 2,029 adults was published for the first time on the carnivore diet. The study is essentially useless by Baker's own criteria, as is self-reporting, taken from a social media questionnaire among adults self-identifying as consuming a carnivore diet for 6 months. Dr. Baker doesn't believe in any studies at all, but then he pushed for this study to happen and touted this study as if it was one of the highest caliber studies that exists, when really it's the lowest caliber that exists. It's really just an idea No observation, no clinical trial, no actually testing the food on people and taking it away. You know, there's all kinds of stuff done in tests, in studies, but none of that was done for this study. So it was not a long-term study or controlled. Questionnaires are a commonly used tool in epidemiology studies, which Baker has criticized. He had no problem when it being used for a case because the study was on the carnivore diet. By the way, this is Rational Wiki, not Normal Wiki, so it's got a little bit of a bite to it. It's still accurate. Baker has since promoted the study on Twitter and his YouTube channel as making carnivore diet history, and advertises it as some kind of scientific breakthrough. Baker also claims he had personally pushed for the study to be done and was waiting 3 years for it to happen. Baker has not talked about any of the limitations of the study, but continues to criticize epidemiology studies being done on plant-based diets as biased and useless. Baker's bias and contradictory belief about epidemiology studies were noticed by some of his Instagram and Twitter followers. An alarming result of the study was elevated LDL-C and coronary artery calcification score increased by almost 50%. However, Baker had misrepresented the results of the study on Twitter as decreeing CAC. Baker has since deleted this tweet. So conflict of interest in studies is obviously something you kind of need to keep an eye on. And so the Harvard carnivore study in the acknowledgement section thanked Dr. Baker, Sean Baker, and Travis Statham, another carnivore influencer, for input. So it's like it's one of the most biased, least high caliber of study that you could ever have, Lois. Thanks, babe. So yeah, it's a ridiculous for these guys to throw this around as if like he said, Baker here said it was some sort of scientific breakthrough when it isn't really. It's simply an article, basically a guy wrote an article about the 2,000 people he talked to about the study, and of course they all said it's great because they're all in the cult. They're all in the Rogan cult groupthink, where all these guys just blow smoke up each other's asses and tell each other how great they are for being on the diet, this lazy diet they could be on. But here's what they actually came to conclusion of. This plant-based poser did this article, and it sounds like she's positive about it, which is odd.
Yeah, I noticed that that study was basically just self-reporting. Like it was basically testimonials, and I read that he got like $400,000, and it just kind of disappeared.
Oh, Bracky.
I don't know how much you guys can hear of that, man.
Oh, I didn't have it up. Whoops. Oops.
But yeah, that $400,000 or whatever that figure was just kind of disappeared.
So self-identifying. So these are people that claim to have been on the carnivore diet for 6 months, which I would highly doubt that any of these people were strict for 6 months. They just wanted to sign up for their buddy, like it's all weird popularity thing with Rogan, mind control, everyone being programmed that all this stuff is really cool and that you're supposed to be huge muscle bound Dr. Carnivore guy, when really these influencers have been paid by the meat and dairy industry to raise the numbers of basically the last decade. Eating meat has gone down quite a bit, and so the obvious response by the meat and dairy industry would be to pay influencers to make it really cool to eat double the amount of meat and have all these knuckleheads totally believe it and ruin their health in the meantime. These guys are demons, Sean Baker. Straight up demons. They do not care. They only care about money. Just like Joe claiming that Big Pharma only cares about money. He only cares about money. He sold someone. He sold millions and millions of people snake oil, feeding them soy. Those pills are straight up soy. So feeding them soy, charging them $60 for soy, and then making fun of soy boys at the same time. Unbelievable.
Nobody ever checked the
November
label.
and I wanted to dig in. It was done by Belinda Leonards, Jacob May, Owen Henn, and David Ludwig. The abstract looks very positive. Basically, they performed social media survey between March 30th and June 24th among adults self-identifying as consuming carnivore diet for over 6 months. So they were surveyed about dietary intake patterns, symptoms suggestive of nutritional deficiencies or other adverse.
This is surveyed. They weren't told to eat a certain diet. This is just what they were eating on their own.
Effects, satisfaction, prior and current health conditions, anthropometrics, and laboratory data. There were around 2,000 respondents that
And they're totally taking these guys' words for it.
were fit for this study. The average respondent ate carnivore for around 14 months, motivated by health reasons. Red meat was consumed most at 85%. 10% ate vegetables, fruit, or grains, and 37% denied vitamin supplement use. Prevalence of adverse symptoms was low, between less than 1% and 5.5%. Symptoms included gastrointestinal, muscular, and dermatologic. Participants reported high.
All this is a litmus test for how much liars these guys' fans are. Like these ultra militant carnivore diet fan guys. This is just a litmus test for how much they're lying. Because this isn't coming. What we're actually seeing happen are a lot of negative things going from being on the carnivore diet that long. People having strokes, people having insomnia, people low testosterone. Holy crap. So according to science, vegans have higher testosterone and carnists have lower testosterone. Like, why wouldn't that bother you? I'm sure it does. But yeah, so this is just all this is oh yeah, let's just get like let's do a survey on my Facebook page with all the carnists on there, all the meatards. Let's do and let's see, it'll be across the board. Everyone will say it's the best thing they ever did in their life. There's all their symptoms of everything went away. They're all going to lie. That's all that we're seeing here. Their buddy, Dr. Baker, literally sent them an email and was like, hey, bro, I need your help. Of course they're going to go and bullshit. So this study is an absolute joke.
Reported high levels of satisfaction and improvements in overall health, 95%, well-being, various medical conditions,
95%,
and BMI. LDL cholesterol was markedly elevated.
Yet now, 3 years later, carnivore's dead. Everyone's quitting.
Among a subset of reporting, whereas HDL and triglycerides were optimal. Participants with diabetes reported benefits including reductions in BMI and diabetic medication use 84 to 100%. That's pretty amazing. In conclusion, the author said, contrary to common expectations, adults consuming
the only weight you lose on carnivore is muscle glycogen, which is something you kind of need. Everything in your body runs off of it. Glucose, muscle glycogen, every cell in your body, your brain, your hormone system, it all needs glucose, sugar, carbs.
Yeah, you run out the water and then
not
you run
meat,
out your
not fat.
glycogen.
Yeah. What Bracky said.
Whatever I said. You'll see it on the playback. Yeah,
And then that study just came out saying that eating red meat causes a 60% raise in diabetes. But yet these guys are claiming that diabetes, it lowers diabetes. So it's like, okay, which is it? And what they'll say is, oh, it's because you're mixing in plants with all that food. The plants are actually killing you. Right.
carnivore diets experienced few adverse effects and instead reported health benefits and high satisfaction. Cardiovascular risk factors were variably affected. The generalizability of these findings and long-term effects of this dietary pattern require further study. So I will point out that most of the participants were male from United States, Canada, Europe, and Australia. 83% were white and non-Hispanic, and 64% completed a college degree or the equivalent. Most of them were middle class. 7 of the women were pregnant and 10 were breastfeeding. 42% of the participants included organ meat in their diet, and 72% non-milk dairy, which would be like cheese. 75% of them denied the use of over-the-counter supplements. Alcohol was
They really need to do a test on breast milk, keto carnivore breast milk and vegan breast milk and normie breast milk.
Yeah, test the nutrition and the
baby
gluten.
diaper.
was rarely consumed. Over 50% did drink coffee, however. Most participants ate twice a day and generally
Oh, coffee. 50% of them survive off of a plant-based product.
they ate high-fat cuts of meat compared to lean cuts. They preferred consuming their meat raw.
When you deplete your body of muscle glycogen, you have to fool your body into having energy by drinking a shitload of caffeine. And by drinking a shitload of caffeine, you fry out your hormone system and all kinds of stuff. Your adrenals get all messed up. Not great. Anxiety.
Rare or medium rare. 41% were trying to achieve ketosis. Most of them did report improvements in chronic medical conditions, general health, aspects of well-being, such as energy, sleep, strength, endurance, mental clarity, memory, and focus. Adverse events were generally low, however. The events they did report were
Right.
diarrhea, constipation, weight gain.
Depleting your body of glycogen, the opposite of having endurance. There's no endurance when you eat this garbage diet.
Muscle cramps, hair loss or thinning, insomnia, dry skin, itchiness, brittle fingernails, and arrhythmia. Worsening or incidence of any of the other assessed symptoms occurred less than 1%. This study is definitely worth a read for anyone who's
Diarrhea,
interested.
huh?
I do agree, however, that their study did not address several important concerns and more studies would be needed. Of course, this was a survey
Obviously.
and you're relying on
Jesus
people's
Christ.
reports.
This isn't a study. It's a survey. This goes without saying. There should be more. Clearly, duh.
They did not measure nutrient status. However, they asked questions regarding symptoms that could indicate lack of nutrition. This diet seemed to be great for weight loss, as well as patients with type 2 diabetes, as it has been used in the past for diabetes. Overall, I would say this is a very positive study, and I look forward to more to come.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically our Sean Baker's fans liars. Here's a test. Because it's turning out that it's not the case. All those negative things were reported by 1% of those 2029. Give me a break. Almost every carnivore influencer that I know of has quit. Like, straight up. Nope, that was a bad idea. Testosterone going down. Yeah, not down with that. Can't sleep at night. Yeah, that's not cool. No energy to work out. Yeah, that's probably not the greatest thing. And then when you look at the studies, they're scary. You know, like low carb diet raises all cause mortality across the board, like quite a bit. 30-something%. Yikes. I'd rather not gamble with that. And carbs are bomb. The body loves carbs.
Definitely missing out on that diet.
Oh,
Well, and they
no,
all
there's
have
been all
to.
these good comments.
Well, and they all pump supplements on the side too. Like they have a side hustle of selling supplements, just like Atkins did. I don't know if you guys can hear me, but
Sverage is a
he's on the
what's it
run.
called? Yeah, he's on the run. He's probably might have, might be gone actually.
Man.
Crazy Carnus, man. All right, so the rest of the show, Braxton's gonna be the host. He gets to do whatever he wants. We're just
I got
gonna be
nothing.
here because our connection's bad. Sorry. Bracky's in charge now. Pull up some videos. What do you want to talk about?
I don't know, man. I got nothing right now. I know Mike the Vegan put out a video where he was talking about tattoos and lymphoma. That was kind of interesting. But I don't know if
I turn all this off, I can hear you better.
Oh, okay, that's kind of a miracle. Yeah, Mike the Vegan put out some video just yesterday. I think it was like tattoos increase lymphoma study, a level-headed response. And by just by the title, it looks like he's probably gonna say like there's not enough of like a connection, I guess, to show like causation, something to that effect. Just more fear mongering, and then you have to wonder what the whole thing of the jab and what that was doing to cancer rates. But yeah, I kind of got nothing right now. We are terrified to debate you, race.
Yeah.
It'd be crazy to see him come up on camera.
Have you learned anything about corn this week?
Not yet. I found out that the local place I was getting it from doesn't have the blue corn, so I had to settle for the yellow stuff. Still pretty good. Yeah. Makes good tortillas. I'm hearing a little bit of a delay.
Is there no GO where you are?
There is,
got
yeah.
the blue stuff. Why don't you explain nixtamalization to everyone?
Okay. So yeah, nixtamalization. Basically, we have like regular corn that everybody's ever known about that has become like associated with American culture and cuisine. Like everybody knows that there's grits. We have like there's all the comfort foods like corn on the cob and everything. But at the end of the day, that stuff doesn't quite digest as well as it could, and there's a lot of potential nutrition that's locked away in each little kernel. And when you do this process that they've known about for like in South America, they've known about it for like at least 2,500 years. They're saying you take lime or like calcium hydroxide, which used to come from wood ash, and you break down the corn or the maize, and you slowly cook it, and more of that nutrition is unlocked. So anybody who wants to get the full nutritional benefits you're supposed to get from making like your tortillas or tamales, whatever it is, yeah, come to the corn side, like Ali said. There is so much potential in that food. Maize is life. I'm still getting ready to make I think it's a tole, that one drink with sugar and corn. Buys into blue corn. No pressure. Oh, grains and grit. Hacienda, that's a good brand. We tried that. So this is my aunt, and she's making tortillas, I believe. No. All ears. I'm going to try to guess what she's doing. It looks like she's taking maize kernels and she's mixing in the calcium hydroxide. I'll walk you through this process. She's adding some water and she's probably going to let it soak for a while. Add lots of water.
Fermented?
You probably could. I'm actually curious to see if you could like ferment the grains. If that adds
you see
something to it.
the background?
Oh yeah. Is that Dave Chappelle with his oil instead of crack? Same thing.
You see the background? It's cracky, but he's got nooch.
Oh, nooch. Okay. That is a vegan's crack right there. Yeah, that atole. They make that pre-mixed stuff. We got to try. That stuff was really good. I think you can do something similar. You have to like, I still want to try this, but you just take the pinole, the corn powder that's been nixtamalized, and you like mix it with sugar, I think, and you like either heat it up in a pan or like in an oven, and all of it kind of combines. You have this like sugar.
What's she doing there, Braxton?
What's that? Getting a line of nooch. It's become my show now. Speaking of which, I need to get some nooch. Make some good cheese sauce with that. Oh. The no pressure show. Yeah, look at that. That's some good nixtamization going on there.
My shit's so delayed.
I gotta love Labor Day weekend. All these people giving birth at the same time. It's crazy. So many born days. Now she's getting ready to clean out those corn kernels.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta go through and wash off that outer layer, kind of like your garbanzo beans.
What are you talking about?
Is that the video that you guys have played in the background there? doing some commentary. I don't even know what's going on right now. Everybody should read this label. It's crazy. Find the Dr. Bronner soap label. You'll eliminate your need for having natural law influencers. People have been led astray on the One Great Work Network. Proceed to tell.
There's like a 10-minute delay.
Yeah, I noticed that. I could hear like a little bit of like an echo. I can hear my voice from like a minute ago. Where's my corn video? Oh, there we go. Okay, so now she's getting into the process where she's going to separate the water from the corn. You got to make sure to continue to spray out your kernels. Looks like her sink filter got clogged. I don't even know what I'm doing right now. Braxton's commentary hour.
Got a question in the Dune Rider coaching group. What time is it? It's question time.
Hardly.
Can eating too much sugar dehydrate you? Since I've increased my sugar, I'm noticing slight headaches. Great question. Let's break it down. Can eating too much sugar? What is too much sugar? I guess very vague. Vague.
I'm going to dip out, and hopefully next week we'll have better internet all around. With the holiday being gone.
Subjective. Objective meaning one.
Let Harley ride this out.
Subjective meaning give me a bunch of numbers. So subjective is it was
cool
this
sunglasses.
sort of big, like that big.
Peace.
Objective is it was 17.7 centimeters by 4 or 5 inches. No, I'm talking about anything. Get your mind out of it. Can you about sugar dehydrate? When you increase your sugar intake, yes, you many people notice their cortisol drops. Right, sugar decreases cortisol, and with a decrease in cortisol, testosterone can go up. Also, what we notice with the increase in sugar consumption is our muscles, they get fuller, they feel more tight and just pumped. So that will want the body to crave more water to help our muscles, have more pump and definition and ability. So yes, water requires sugar. Sugar requires water. And that's why when you do low carb or run out of carbs, you get dehydrated, your kidneys get under pressure. And when you go into ketosis, you become in a very acidic state, because ketones are an acidic form of energy production as a backup source of energy, but they are very acidic. And so you can leach calcium and leach water from your body to neutralize that acidity, etc. So you got to be careful with that. But anyway, the question is, does sugar increase dehydration? No, not drinking enough water. But like when I've jacked my testosterone really, really high, my craving for water can go up. Like my need for water goes up. That's because the testosterone increase when I've got, my testosterone is like just crazy high. the drive for water is higher for sure, because you just can store more glycogen. You store more glycogen, so you need to drink more water when you're on when your testosterone is really up there. So yeah, this is a common one. When you have more sex, you're winning in life. When you're more productive, when you're just crushing it, you need more water. Not more water, you need enough water, because more water could be a couple of that. I'm having more water, but that's not enough. We always in life is all about having enough. Okay, not more, enough. Because more hugs and more sleep might not be enough. You always want to focus on enough carbs, enough sugar. Carbs, sugar, carbs, enough sleep, not more. Not more training, enough training to get the desired effects, because more might be too much training and then you're overtrained. Okay, so more isn't always better. Enough is what we're looking for here. So we have that enough mindset. I drink enough water, so I'm pissing clear every 2 hours during the day, winter and summer. And I find that gives me the maximum penile performance, sexual performance, maximum mental performance, sleep, recovery, digestion, skin health, etc. Every enough water, so I'm peeing every 2 hours clear. You go to the toilet a lot. I'm going to the toilet every 2 hours at least. I'm pissing on the garden, pissing on the tree, pissing in the bushes, tipping on the trees where it's meant to be. I'm contributing to the environment in a better way. And I don't live a normal life. Right? I don't want to be a normal person. I don't want a normal looking girlfriend. I don't have normal levels of fitness. I want to have exceptional. All right. I'm into exceptional life quality. And so that water, sugar, and sleep, they are the cornerstones of that, trilogy, that triangle, pyramid, whatever you want to call it. Sleep, water, sugar. All right. Get enough sleep, get enough water, get enough sugar. And never ever wait till you're thirsty. If you wait till you're thirsty, you've waited too long. And now remember, I coach and advise and influence the best triathletes, the best runners, the best cyclists have ever lived on the planet. They follow my sleep, water, sugar protocols. If you know, you know. Well, I don't want to win the Tour de France. You want to have a great quality of life and have energy for your kids? Do what I'm saying to do. Comes to sleep or sugar. That is the ticket.
If you would like to access more of our content, consider becoming a supporting member. Members have access to over 73 membership videos, with more added each month. Sign up for $6 a month, $49 a year, or a one-time payment of $109. So men also grow, some in the light, others in the shadows. There are many who need the shadows, and not the light. None of us are as good as we like to think. We possess animalistic drives for sex and power. We have a cruel and aggressive side that can do great harm to others, and we tend to deny our flaws and weaknesses. But what we deny does not disappear. It sinks into the unconscious and congregates in what Carl Jung called the shadow. In this video, we are going to explore how confronting the shadow and integrating its elements into our personality is a means to rejuvenate our life and heal a divided world. Only the man who goes through this darkness, writes Jung, can hope to make any further progress. For a shadow to be cast, an object must impede a path of light. The object that casts our psychological shadow is our persona. Persona is a Latin word signifying a mask worn by an actor. In Jungian psychology, the persona represents the metaphorical mask we wear in the social world. It is the collection of character traits we want others to believe define us. Or as Jung writes, the persona is a kind of mask, designed on the one hand to make a definite impression upon others and, on the other, to conceal the true nature of the individual. The construction of our persona begins early in life as we learn which elements of our character garner approval from family members, peers, and society at large, and which are rejected. The former we integrate into our persona, the latter we hide behind its mask. Over time, however, so as not to feel like a fraud, most of us identify with our persona and in the process hide unwanted character traits not only from others, but also from ourselves. These character traits are repressed and congregate in the unconscious to form the shadow. The shadow is the inferior part of the personality, some of all psychic elements which, because of their incompatibility with the chosen conscious attitude of the persona, are denied expression in life and therefore coalesce into a relatively autonomous splinter personality with contrary tendencies in the unconscious. The repressed contents of our shadow do not lie dormant in the unconscious, never to be heard from again. Rather, they operate in an autonomous manner behind the spotlight of conscious awareness. One way the shadow manifests itself is through projection, wherein we perceive in other individuals, groups, nations, races, or political parties the weaknesses, faults, and evils that reside within ourselves. Or as Jung put it, we still attribute to other fellow all the evil and inferior qualities that we do not like to recognize in ourselves, and therefore have to criticize and attack him, when all that has happened is that an inferior soul has emigrated from one person to another. The world is still full of scapegoats, just as it formerly teemed with witches and werewolves. Elements of our shadow also find expression in our day-to-day life by affecting our moods and behaviors. For the character traits, instincts, and desires that we repress fester in the unconscious, creating a tension between our conscious personality and the autonomous splinter personality, the shadow. At times of stress or conflict, when our conscious mind is unable to keep the doors of the unconscious closed, the shadow reveals itself, and often with damaging consequences. There are patients who boast that for them the shadow side does not exist. They assure us that they have no conflict. They do not see that other things of unknown origin cover their path. Hysterical moods, underhand tricks which they play on themselves and their neighbors, a nervous inflammation of the stomach, pains in various places, irritability for no reason, and a whole host of nervous symptoms. Rather than denying the shadow, we are far better served by shining a light on this dark side of our character. Confronting the shadow begins with accepting its existence and realizing that the personality we portray to the world and our conscious sense of self does not represent us in totality. Once accepted, honest self-reflection and self-criticism can reveal some of the traits we have been hiding from. The good and the bad, explains Jung, are bound to come to light in us, should we wish, as we ought, to live without self-deception and self-delusion. But not all the contents of our shadow can be confronted by turning within, as some elements of our character have been pushed too far into the depths of the unconscious. To unearth these elements, we can use a few different tactics. Firstly, we should take notice of any traits in other people that trigger a particularly strong emotional reaction, as this is a sign that the same trait lies within us. Another tactic is to peer into the shadow of someone close to us, a task that is typically easier than peering into our own. For although some aspects of the shadow are personal, much that gets deposited there is influenced by social and cultural trends, and so shared among members of our society. A character trait we reject is likely being rejected by a sibling or close friend. If we can learn about their shadow, clues about our own will be revealed. I have come to the conclusion that the most individual thing about man is surely his consciousness, but that his shadow is far less individualized, the reason being that a man is distinguished from his fellows more by his virtues than by his negative qualities. One of the many benefits of gaining greater knowledge of our dark side is that it creates a contrast that allows the good of our character to stand out in greater prominence. Or as Jung writes, when we confront the shadow, we suddenly see both sides. We become aware not only of our moral inferiorities, but also, automatically, of our good qualities. We rightly say, I can't be as bad as all that. To confront a person with his shadow is to show him his own light. Confronting the shadow also reduces the ability of our flaws and weaknesses to wreak havoc on our life. Awareness of an anger issue, selfishness, greed, or aggression, or of an obsession or compulsion, grants us the opportunity to exert a modicum of control over it. We can strive to overcome them, or at least minimize its potential damage, as Jung explains. The psychiatrist knows that certain dangerous unconscious forces can be rendered harmless, or at least held in check, if they are made conscious, that is, if the patient can assimilate them and integrate them with his personality. In the shadow, we also discover instinctual drives for aggression, power, and sex that contain immense amounts of energy. In becoming aware of these drives and sublimating them, that is, putting them in the service of higher ends, these drives can empower us, motivate us to take the needed risks for a fulfilling life, and even spur our creativity. Only down below, writes Jung, can we find the fiery source of life. The shadow contains more than just animalistic instincts, flaws, and weaknesses. It is also home to strengths of our character which we repressed as a result of a poor upbringing or adapting to a sick society. Some people, for example, deny their intelligence, creativity, resoluteness, or ability to act in defiance of corrupt authority figures. The shadow, writes Jung, does not consist only of morally reprehensible tendencies, but also displays a number of good qualities, such as normal instincts, appropriate reactions, realistic insights, creative impulses, etc. The shadow is on one side regrettable and reprehensible weakness, on the other side, healthy instinctivity and the prerequisite for higher consciousness. To harness the positive side of our shadow requires more than merely observing what resides in its depths. We should consciously integrate the elements of our shadow into our character and allow them expression in our day-to-day life. Or as Jung's renowned student Erich Neumann wrote, "The recognition and acceptance of the shadow presupposes more than a mere willingness to look at one's dark brother, and then to return him to a state of suppression where he languishes like a prisoner in a jail. It involves granting him freedom to share in one. Reconnecting with the positive side of our shadow, minimizing the effects of its negative side, and integrating it all into our conscious sense of self produces a character that tends toward the ideal of wholeness, which Jung believed defined the psychologically healthy. As we approach a state of wholeness, we become more attractive to other people, for human beings possess an instinctive suspicion of those who appear too good and who identify too much with their persona. We know that beneath a bright persona, a dark and dangerous shadow. Far more attractive is the complete character, the whole man, who knows not only of his strengths, virtues, and potential for good, but also of his weaknesses, faults, and potential for evil. Or as Jung writes, the shadow belongs to the wholeness of the personality. The strong man must somewhere be weak. Somewhere the clever man must be stupid. Otherwise he is too good to be true and falls back on pose and bluff. Is it not an old truth that woman loves the weaknesses of the strong man more than his strength, and the stupidity of the clever man more than his cleverness? Her love wants the whole man. Those of us who take up the challenge of confronting the shadow will also help heal a divided world. For when we face the shadow, we withdraw our projections, and we stop participating in the rampant scapegoating of political opponents or members of a different race, religion, ethnicity, or gender. If you imagine someone who is brave enough to withdraw all these projections, writes Jung, then you get an individual who is conscious of a pretty thick shadow. Such a man has saddled himself with new problems and conflicts. He has become a serious problem to himself, as he is now unable to say that they do this or that. They are wrong, and they must be fought against. Too many people see all the problems in society and all the problems of other people, but fail to notice the much more serious problem that lies within themselves. They fail to see they are a character split in two, and until they confront the shadow, they will only amplify the hostility and divisiveness of the modern world. The man who confronts his shadow knows that whatever is wrong in the world is in himself. And if he only learns to deal with his own shadow, he has done something real for the world. He has succeeded in shouldering at least an infinitesimal part of the gigantic, unsolved social problems of our day. How can anyone see straight when he does not even see himself and the darkness he unconsciously carries with him into all his dealings? Access the transcript in the art we use in this video and learn more about our membership by visiting academyofideas.com.